this is just the beginning.
Welcome to Axios' War for Truth, our first ever virtual town hall. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to get you smarter, faster on the issues that matter most in 2021. We'll be giving you a sneak peek in what's our reporters' heads about the year ahead and explain more about how Axios is expanding its mission to win the war for truth. But before we start talking about 2021, let's take a moment to talk about where we are as a country right now. The violent events at the U.S. Capitol last week demonstrated just how urgently and persistently clear, unbiased news coverage is needed. The rhetoric of fake news and alternate facts have eroded public trust, and a larger number of people no longer believe much of the news they consume. What can the media take from this? How can the media find ways to win back the trust of the millions of Americans who no longer believe in the news? To answer these questions and more, I'm going to bring out my bosses, Axios co-founder and CEO Jim Vandehei and co-founder Mike Allen. Let's start with you, Mike.
Well, Yolanda, thank you for teeing that up. And I write a newsletter every morning and afternoon, Axios AM, Axios PM. And so I'm in constant touch with our readers. And what we're finding out is that readers are more demanding than ever. And they should be. They deserve more. Because what have we learned in this pandemic moment? For one thing, every trend in business and society is speeded up. How we work, how we live, how we connect. And we're learning that so many of those are never going back. These are permanent changes. So people more than ever need help cutting through the chaos, getting information that's worthy of their time and trust. And Yolanda, that goes way beyond politics. We sometimes have too much politics on our brain, but so many other big topics, the future of work, autonomy, AI, all of these are going to make a massive difference to people and the decisions that they make. So Axios works very hard to cover all of those clinically and digestibly. And Jim, at the top, Yolanda talked about the war for truth. You've been thinking about that war for a long time.
Yeah, man, Mikey, sadly, you and I talk about it every day. Like, the bottom line is, like, we're losing that war, at least with a big chunk of the American public. And to me, and to you, to us, there really is no bigger crisis for media, for politics, for society writ large than the growing number of people who don't really believe anything that they read. They don't believe verifiable figures. And if we don't collectively solve this, I truly believe this, we as a people are screwed. If you're not operating from a common set of facts, a common reality, you can't deal with the complexities of this world. And I think that's more than anything what motivates all of us. And so we think all the time, we started this company to help people get smarter, faster. We think about, how do you evolve that calling? How do you evolve our manifesto to tackle this war on truth? And one of the small things that we're going to do, it's big for us, but small in the scheme of things, is create a Bill of Rights, an Axios Bill of Rights. Basically, our promises, our very transparent promises with readers, viewers, and listeners. And we want to be held accountable for living up to these ideals, because we have to, one person at a time, win back your trust. If you're a Trump supporter, you're a Republican who's been skeptical of media, I want you to read our content and really see that we're trying to get to the closest approximation of the truth. I want you to read this Bill of Rights and say, wow, here's a company who's really putting thought and real words and action into trying to get it right, and get it right for everyone. You can see the full Bill of Rights at Axios.com. We encourage you to read it, to hold us accountable. It includes 10 amendments. Number one, every item will be written by a real person with a real verified identity. There'll be no bots, no fake accounts, ever. Two, we take responsibility for all content that appears on our public platform. This puts the pressure on us to provide the highest level of scrutiny. Three, we will play no games with your data or privacy. We will be careful and transparent in providing you clear ways for you to know how we use your data at Axios. Four, Every item will be written to inform, educate, analyze, and explain. There will never be an opinion section on Axios. 5, we will sacrifice scale for quality and always aim to save you time by delivering content in the most efficient, healthy way. 6, we will be transparent about how we make money on the Axios platform and provide you clear ways for you to tell us how we can better serve you. 7, we are committed to helping revive local journalism and invite local readers to help us best serve their community. 8, we will go the extra mile to earn your trust. Every employee, regardless of their job at Axios, has been asked to refrain from taking or advocating for public positions on political topics. 9, we will always cover the topics of greatest consequence with clinical, critical, and balanced eyes. 10, we believe high-quality journalism should not be an exclusive privilege. We will provide free access to the majority of our content.
Jim, thank you for sharing our new Bill of Rights. As you saw, you can find our Bill of Rights at axios.com/about. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jim and Mike. Next up, we'll be talking with Axios reporters about the one big thing they're watching in 2021. Editor-in-Chief Nick Johnston will kick it off with a discussion with Ina Fried about what's coming in the new year in the technology space. Nick?
Thanks, Yolanda. Hi, Ina, how are you? Tell me what's on your mind as the one big thing for 2021.
I think it's shaping up to be a really interesting year on the policy front and so unknown. You know, we're going into a new administration. I think a lot of the events will be guided by what happened in the final days of the Trump administration. I think it's given a reality to things that have been talked about for a long time in terms of misinformation on social media. So I think there will be a really robust conversation, not just among politicians, but among consumer groups, among the employees within tech companies, about the role tech companies are playing. And I think that will play out in a lot of different ways, you know, whether we have actual legislation or not. I think we're also going to see some things that kicked off at the end of 2019 become into focus. Things like the antitrust investigations of Google and Facebook that have been announced, and potentially ones against Apple and Amazon. That's on the policy side. I think the other thing that will be interesting to see is what new technology has been quietly cooking up while all these employees in Silicon Valley have been home. So I think it has slowed the traditional what are employees up to a little in terms of hardware. We haven't really seen a lot of breakthroughs in the last few months. Certainly COVID has rightfully taken everyone's focus and attention, and then politics. But I do think we're getting closer to some of the things we'll see in the next couple years, like augmented reality glasses. We won't see the real thing that everyone's waiting for in terms of a computer on my eyes, but I think we'll see a lot of bridges to that, including Facebook's going to have its first smart glasses, which will probably be more of a camera recording device than they will be this full-on immersive augmented reality experience. But that's coming in a few years.
Awesome. What about hoverboards?
Well, it's funny you mentioned. I mean, I don't think we're going to have hoverboards per se, certainly not of the Marty McFly era. But what I do think is some of the very maligned modes of micromobility, the scooters, all these shared modes of transit could have a moment when the world's starting to get back to work, but people are still worried about being too close to a large group of people. You know, then your options are kind of limited. Either you drive your own gas-guzzling car, or you ride a bike, you walk, and you know, these shared bikes and shared scooters may actually be a thing again.
Awesome. Thanks, Ina. Great talking to you as always. And now I'll throw it over to Mike Allen, Axios co-founder, and Axios energy and climate reporter Amy Harder to talk about the big things to watch on energy in 2021.
Thank you very much, Nick and Ina. And now from the real Washington, Seattle, Washington, Amy Harder, who covers climate and energy, does her weekly Harder Line column. And Amy, when Democrats took control of the Senate, the world changed for a lot of things, including climate, right?
It certainly did. I think the things that I'll be looking at in Congress now that Democrats are controlling both chambers of Congress is really how they're going to inject climate change into everything they do. And now that Senator Mitch McConnell, who resides in the coal-rich state of Kentucky, won't be controlling the floor, they'll be able to inject a lot of spending and potentially using the legislative tools like budget reconciliation to do bigger things than they perhaps wouldn't have been able to do before. But I'll caution that the Democratic Party is not monolithic. And somebody who's going to be incredibly important is Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia. He'll be the chairman of the Energy Committee, and he'll be pivotal in ensuring that nothing too progressive gets out of the Democrat-controlled Senate, even though Democrats control both chambers of Congress. So it still changes the game, but I don't see anything like the Green New Deal happening, but maybe really big spending priorities and tax subsidies.
So, Amy, I was asking you off camera what segments of the energy industry you're bullish on, and there's a list, but you're big on solar.
Well, I'm big on all renewable energy. I think immediately after the news came that Democrats had clinched the Senate, you saw stocks of solar companies skyrocket. You'll see similar in wind, particularly offshore wind companies. That industry is just a baby now on the East Coast. You're going to see all these massive turbines pop up in the ocean. I think other technologies like electric vehicles, the incoming Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, has been pretty bullish on electric cars, but other things as well, and technologies that we haven't heard a lot about, like hydrogen. All of these technologies that are critical to address climate change are going to suddenly get a lot of money and attention from Washington.
And Amy, as we get the hook here, you do something every year that very few reporters do, certainly political reporters don't. And that is, in one of your columns, you revisit the predictions you made the year before. So I got to ask you, what's the worst prediction you've ever made in a column?
Well, I think 2020 allowed a lot of us to make predictions that ended up being completely inaccurate. So yes, every year, this is my fourth annual column, Outlook column for Axios. And, in 2020, I predicted that the Paris Climate Agreement, which was 5 years old as of last year, was really going to be a make or break moment for climate change. And there was going to be a big conference in November. And of course, none of that happened, along with pretty much everything else we had planned. And so while climate change is a slow moving problem and maybe 1 year doesn't make a big difference, I think it's going to be even more pivotal this year. So I made another prediction this year that this is a really key year to make up for things that were lost in the year that was ravaged by the pandemic. And depending on how things go, I might be wrong again.
And you'll be honest about it, unlike most reporters. Amy Harder, thanks for your great coverage of energy and climate.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And now we're going to hear from Axios executive editor Sarah Gu and Caitlin Owens, who covers healthcare.
Thanks, Mike and Amy. And hi, Caitlin. So what's on your mind as the one big thing in 2021?
Hey, Sarah. Thanks for chatting with me today. I think it's kind of funny. What's on my mind as a healthcare reporter is the same thing that I think is on the entire world's mind, which is, when are we all going to be vaccinated against the coronavirus and be able to return to normal? And I think that, in light of this kind of sluggish rollout of the vaccine, and then kind of a confluence of factors that are all coming to a head ahead of Joe Biden's inauguration, I think we actually don't know exactly what this is going to look like and what the timeline is going to be.
Right. And, the big story, of course, in 2020 was the miracle of getting vaccines produced from multiple companies. In 2021, it's about getting them into people's arms. So how do you see that challenge changing under a new administration?
Well, it's not just a new administration. I think that we had our ideas about how vaccine distribution would and should go. And then, kind of a reality came in. First of all, we're I think, for experiencing real life challenges of distributing vaccines to literally the entire world, as well as the entire country. And then there's also this mutation that's happened where we're seeing a strain of the virus start to circulate that is more contagious, which adds urgency to getting more people vaccinated quickly. And then we're also trying to administer a vaccine in the middle of by far the worst surge of the virus that we've seen to date, which means that, we're looking at it was always really important to get everyone vaccinated as quickly as possible, but that has become even more important somehow over the past couple of weeks and months. And so, I think we're seeing a lot of conversations about, okay, what are the trade-offs and different decisions about how to administer the vaccine and distribute it? And I think that some of these, we're going to have to make trade-offs that I don't think we foresaw at the beginning.
Right. It seems like there's a slight change in thinking, at least early on. We're hearing about in terms of who gets it, how we distribute it, and how that really helps us turn the page into quote unquote normal life again. And I'm curious to see, what are you hearing from public health officials about the best way to go about that? And is that changing? Do you think that will change in 2021?
Well, some of the biggest discussions we're seeing now is, for example, about priority lists. There was all this talk for months now about who should get the vaccine first and what order. And now we're kind of saying, okay, oh no, we're adhering too rigidly to these priority lists, and it's slowing us down, or it's resulting in vaccines being wasted. You're seeing conversations globally about, okay, should we delay the second shot of this vaccine to make sure that more people get the first shot? And have some degree of protection instead of full protection, which is something, it shows the insanity of the moment, just because this wasn't tried in clinical trials. This is experimentation on the fly in order to save as many lives as possible. And so I think as the administration comes into power and shortly, these are the kind of the decisions that are going to immediately land on President Biden's desk.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. And now we'll turn over to Axios co-founder Jim Vandehei and markets editor Dion Rabowen for their one big thing.
Thank you very much, Sarah and Caitlin. It's now my pleasure to bring to you our markets expert, Dion, who writes a daily markets newsletter, spends all of his time sort of thinking about all the different pieces of data and helping all of us better understand how to make sense of it. Dion, as you look at the markets, what do you think most about? What's the thing that sort of preoccupies you when you're thinking globally about what will happen in the next year?
Yeah, one big theme for me that I've really been watching and has been developing over the past few months is this divergence between the stock market and the real economy. And that has real consequences for people. And we're starting to see it with this jobs data that we've seen rolling in, where the number of jobs added has just decreased each month which is moving in the opposite of the direction that you would think, right? We've still got 10 million people who are unemployed now who had jobs in February, and we're seeing less jobs added and potentially even a decline in the number of jobs and net job losses, as we saw in the ADP private payrolls report for December. And that's happening because there's a new way that businesses are thinking about growth. Growth isn't about adding jobs and employing more people to generate more money. It's just about growing at scale and increasing the stock price. And the way you increase the stock price is not to add new employees or to pay more employees or to pay them more. The way you juice the stock price is to buy back stock and to invest in technology that reduces your headcount and that gets you more market share and that just makes you a bigger company. Now, it used to be that if you were going to, get $10 worth of market share, you'd want to spend $9 or $8. Right now, you can spend $100 to get $10 of market share. And that makes sense because the stock price goes up. And that means more money for the CEO, more money for the board, higher stock price, which means shareholders are happy. And that's all that matters. And this is going to be a big theme as this continues with large companies and they continue to cut jobs. And people start asking, hey, if these companies are making record profits and the stock price is going bananas, why can't I get a raise or why can't I get a job? That's something that we've got to watch. And I think that's going to lead to Congress and especially Republicans hauling in Fed Chair Jerome Powell and asking him some real tough questions.
When you talk to sort of the big shots on Wall Street, the people with money, the people paid to make money on money, how worried are they about this disconnect that you described between the markets and the sort of the frothy stock markets and this reality for tens of millions of Americans who either don't have a job or they're watching their wages stagnate?
Yeah. Look, the Wall Street guys I talk to, they're all worried, and they have been for years because they understand that this isn't real and it can't last forever. Now, they're walking this tightrope because you can't just sit this thing out, right? You can't not get in and buy the Teslas and buy the Amazons of the world, because then you lose and you're behind and you're getting beat by the market, and then you lose clients and then you lose your job, right? So they're trying to cash in while this free money environment is going on and the stock market is just going bonkers, while also keeping some money off the table so that when things crash, as they all seem to believe it's going to, because we're just defying economic reality, they're in a better place. So when you look at the numbers, there's a lot of investment in bonds. There's a lot of people keeping money in money market funds and savings accounts rather than investing in the stock market because they just don't trust it. They see what's going on, that we're in this, make-believe economy, and they know it can't last. And they're trying to, stay and play the game, but also keep one foot out of the door just in case things go bad and they need to get out.
Dion, thank you very much. Thank you for your expertise on this topic. And thank you to everybody who tuned in. We take high quality journalism very seriously. We put most of our investment into people who have subject matter expertise so that they can clinically and in a balanced way explain the complexities of these topics to all of you. I urge you to go to Axios.com, to subscribe to your favorite newsletter, subscribe to Dion's and the others you've heard about in the last 30 minutes, listen to our podcast, please watch our show Axios on HBO, and never hesitate to email us and let us know how we can better serve you and help you get smarter faster on the topics that matter.